Today I'm going to teach you how to use your clear blue tiles to do edge-to-edge quilting. I've got two charm pack quilts that I've quilted with clear blue tiles. I'll show you how to lay out the tiles, how to use the system, and how to finish your quilt top so it looks like it went to a long arm quilter. We'll be doing edge-to-edge quilting today. If you haven't used your clear blue tiles before, get them out and get ready to go. We'll do a quick overview of the system and then jump right into how to use them to finish your quilt tops. Let's start with our clear blue tiles essential set. This is the set you need to get started. There's also an expansion set and an expansion 2 set. If you've got the essential set and you haven't opened it yet, get it out, open it right now, right along with me, and we'll go through it together. It comes in a nice heavy duty box. It's got a little handle up here. It opens on the side, has a nice magnetic flap, so after you take it out of the plastic and open it, everything stays together. Let's go over what's inside. I'm going to pull this plastic aside out of the way. We've got our manual, the user guide. We'll go through this together. This is what it looks like on the inside. You have 2 slap bands. You use these to hold your quilts together as you're working on your embroidery machine. There's a little tile here up front. It's the 4x4, and then there's a little picture of one of the designs. I believe that's the swirls design. There's 2 wash-away markers. I've been using my set, so the other wash-away marker is somewhere else in the craft room right now. And you have your clear blue tiles, USB. Go ahead and pull that out. We're going to use this today, so get ready. Once you've pulled out your USB, go ahead and set it aside next to your user manual, which we're going to go through. And then let's pick this up and look at some of the tiles. This inner piece of plastic, this little tray, this comes out, and we've got all of our tiles underneath. There's 2 types of tiles. There's block tiles and border tiles, and you use them just like it says, for your blocks and for your borders. Let's look at a couple. There's all different sizes. They're listed in the manual. You can see on here it says 4x6 finished block. So everything is marked on the tile, and the ones that are border tiles say finished border. The smallest tile in the essential set is the 2x2 finished block. This works with the bitty blocks that are on the USB. We're going to go over a couple details from the user guide, then I'll show you how to mark with your tile, and we'll jump right in. The project we're going to do today, we're going to do with end-to-end quilting, so the same pattern throughout. If you're interested in custom quilting, I'll link a video below where I go through in detail how to custom quilt. It was part 3 of my table runner for the Clear Blue Tiles series. Your user's guide walks you through everything. We're going to take a quick walkthrough of this. I'm going to highlight a few of the features. The first couple of pages, this is page 2 and 3, it shows you your border tiles and your block tiles and what comes in your set. We just went over that. Talks about knowing your tiles, how to mark everything, where everything goes, what you write where, but we're going to walk through that. More explanation about the tiles. We're going to work through a project. That'll make it easier to understand. Knowing your hoops. Because hoops come in different shapes and sizes, it's important to know the size of your hoop, which hoop you're working with, but there is a good general guide in the user guide that we'll work with. This is an example. You can go back and look at that. Here you'll see some sticky notes. I got these when I had only a Baby Lock Pathfinder, and I went through and did a little detailed marking. We're going to work off the chart on page 9 today. We'll come back to that in a minute. I'll explain how to use that. Page 10 walks you through the files that you get on your USB. There's a winter, spring, summer, and fall seasonal looking files. There's loop swirls, border loops, and bitty blocks. And then this talks about how to find your files. There's several pages on using the tiles. We're going to do this together today, so I'm going to go ahead and flip right by that because we're going to step through this and work a project together. Pages 20 and 21 show the seasonal table runners. I did this as a 3-part series. It'll be linked in the description box below. I walk you through making the house blocks, the tree blocks, assembly, and then quilting using clear blue tiles if you'd like to watch that. Got some information about adding quilting to other projects. There's information about buying additional files from Kimberbell's websites, and then some pictures. Let's go ahead and jump in and start working with the tiles. What I go over today is going to apply to regular embroidery hoops like this. I have Baby Lock machines. I have a Baby Lock Pathfinder and a Baby Lock Meridian, but they have generic, it came with the machine hoops. So if you have snap hoops, magnetic hoops, different shape hoops, you need to go back to the beginning of the user guide where it says know your hoops. There's also additional resources from Kimberbell. I'll link that in the description box below. This is a 5x7 hoop. However, if you actually measure the inside of this hoop, it's about 8 3/4 by just over 6. But you know it's a 5x7 hoop. What does that tell you? That means automatically anything that's bigger than 5x7, that's a tile, is not going to fit. I have the block tiles here. Let's have a look at some of these. There's an 8x10, you know that's not going to fit. A 6x10, too big. A 4x10, too big. Now there's a 6x8, and it does fit inside the hoop, but you cannot use this tile with this hoop because this hoop is a 5x7. So 6x8 is bigger than 5x7. So even though visually the tile fits, it is not going to work inside this hoop. So pay attention to that when you're getting ready to do your project. Just because the tile fits inside the hoop does not mean it is appropriate for that size hoop. This is page 9 of the user guide. This is very handy. You have your essential set blocks, essential set borders. It gives you the finished block, tile, and the file size. So the one we just looked at that fit, the 6x8, which looks like it fits in a 5x7. If you look right here, 6x8, it needs an embroidery field of 5.87 by 7.87. That's bigger than 5x7. It's not going to work. That's the easiest way, I think, to figure out which tile is going to fit. If you want to get really detailed, here's an example. I looked up the sizes for the hoops that came with my Pathfinder. My 5x7 can only fit a 4.87 by 7. But when you look at the chart here, go through your blocks, see how it goes 3.87 to 5.87, there's no question what will and won't fit inside my hoop. Let's go over how we're going to mark our project with our tile. This is a 6x8 tile. It fits nicely on the piece of paper. We'll be using the water-soluble pen that came with the clear blue tiles. If you don't have a water-soluble pen, use something you know that works. I don't recommend a friction pen because even when you iron after you have the friction pen, it kind of leaves a ghost mark. So you'll need to think about, if you don't have a water-soluble pen, chalk, something washable, something you know is going to come off your fabric. But I will show you some tips about that in a moment. This is a 6x8 finished block tile. See how there's a little window here? It says size. So if you're doing a project, I'm going to turn this for a moment. I'm standing over here. Where you're using multiple tiles, in the size window, you would write 6x8 because that way, when you get to your machine, you won't forget which tile you're using. When you're working with these markers and making your marks, you can make them directly on a quilt. I have done a wall hanging quilt and I wrote all over it. It does come off. A big tip for using the marker, don't push really hard. Push very light and then it comes off really easily with a spray water bottle, or I like to use one of these little sponge brushes. You just get it wet and rub it and it comes right off. What do you need to mark? There's a center dot. You definitely want to mark that. That's going to help you center your project in your hoop. Crosshairs, different ways to mark them. You can absolutely 100% mark the whole entire box just like that. When I mark my projects, I find that I don't need the big long lines, that I just need a smaller line, just so I'll be able to visually center it in my hoop. And when we work our project, I'll hoop with you and I'll show you what I do and why I don't necessarily mark the whole thing. I will tell you the first project I did, I marked the whole entire thing. And again, the marker came out. It looks great, came out fine. And then you'll see there's some lines around the tile. These help you line it up. There's a little line on each side. And you'll go ahead and mark those lines. Make them about the same size that's on the tile. And then mark your corners. And I'm going to show you something about the corner marking in a moment. But go all the way around the corner. Don't mark like like that, where all you see is a dash and a dash. You want to make the full corner mark so you'll be able to find your corner. There's a full mark with the tiles. I'm going to pull this off the paper. You can ignore these. Here's my marks. Center marks, crosshairs, tile size, and then the marks on the sides, top and bottom, and 4 corners. I didn't mark very good on my 4th corner here, did I? There we go. Let's talk about the corner markings. I'm going to pretend that this tile is right here on my quilt. So let's say you're doing your markings. It's a 6 by 8. See if I can write sideways. Close enough. And then you're going to move to mark your next section. When you go to mark, you want to line up your line there, here, and here. And let me show you. Line it up, and when you make your next line, it's going to go right on top of the previous line. So this is where, depending on what you're comfortable with, the full crosshair might help you line up with the next crosshair. So that's up to you. What I want to show is the corner and the center markings. See how I have one mark? My lines overlap. They don't do this. And then your corner markings, you have the one line. It almost looks kind of like a little tree, like that. You don't have this. You don't want space between your marks. If you have spaces like that between your marks, you're going to have spaces between your quilting. If that happens, honestly, it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Trust me, it's going to look good. Just wanted to show you the optimal way to mark it is to try and make sure as you move between your blocks that these lines are overlapping on your marks and you don't have a gap or you don't have spacing. Let's get ready to start our project. I do want you to know that I have the Essential Set and the Expansion Set 1. I will be pulling from the Expansion Set 1 today because I'm going to use a larger hoop. If you don't have the Expansion Set, you can certainly work with the Essential Set. So we'll figure this out with the Expansion Set and my large hoop, and then we'll do some math as if we were doing the whole thing in a 5x7 hoop. You saw the finished project in the opening. I've made this quilt using 2 charm packs. I've got 8 across and 10 down. I used the Sunday Picnic charm pack by Stacy Itsu. This is an older charm pack, and you can see I've got 4 squares left over. If you want to work on the same size project, this is a quick and easy sew. The approximate finished size is 46 by 36. But don't worry, we're not going to do math. We're going to try out some different tiles and see what fits, and that's how I figure out which tile I want to use for my quilting. I've got a big hoop here. This is a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. We're going to be using the block tiles. If you look at the finished block tile sizes in the Expansion Set, I've got the 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. An 8 by 12 will fit, and an 8 by 14 will fit. Here's both those tiles. This is a good visual. Again, this hoop is a 9.5 by 14. That's an 8 by 12 tile. See how much space is around the outside? The number on your hoop, 9.5 by 14, is smaller than the actual open space. We did that in the beginning with the 5 by 7. This is an 8 by 12. This is an 8 by 14. How do you know which one to pick? Do you always want to pick the biggest tile? Maybe, maybe not. Let's go look at our project. Here's my quilt. I've got it on a folding table. This is how I figure things out for the tiles. Let's go top to bottom. I'm going to start with the 8 by 14 since that's my biggest available tile. So you grab a tile that you know will fit in your hoop. I'm going to lay it down right up top. That would be my first hooping. I can see that it lands right on that seam, so this will be easy for me to look at and work with. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then I have 1 row by itself. So if I want to use this one, I can do 3 with that tile, then I have to pick a smaller tile for the rest of the rows at the bottom, which is absolutely fine. That's the point of this. It would work. Let's grab the 8x12. We already know if I use the 8x14, I have to do 4 hoopings going this way because it gives you 1, 2, 3, and then I have to pick something else for 4. Here's my 8x12. So these tiles are different in length, but not width. So all I'm looking at right now is the length because they're both 8 by something. Here's 1. I can look at where it ends. 2, 3, and 4. It goes just off the edge. So no matter which one of these I use, as far as from top to bottom, I'm going to have 4 hoopings. Rather than working with multiple size tiles, which is what I would have to do with the 8x14, I'm going to make it easy on myself and work with the 8x12. Now when I got to the bottom, it did run off a little at the bottom, which is perfectly fine. We know top to bottom I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's turn the quilt the other direction and see how many we're going to need across. Here's the top of my project. I'm going to lay this down. 1, right about there. 2, from about the center of the orange. 3, we're a little over the pink. 4, it's going to take 5. 5 across, 4 down. This is going to take me 20 hoopings. I've already cut batting and backing for this project, and it's larger than the quilt. Remember, you have to be able to hoop your project. Or if it's already cut, particularly your backing, if it's not big enough, sew some scrap strips around it just so it'll sit and be held in your hoop. We're going to start marking our project. I like to use tape when I do this, and you'll see why in just a moment. One of the things that will really help you when you mark your project is to make sure you have enough time and very important, you've had a snack. Don't do this if you're rushed or if you're hungry or if you're stressed, because things might slip, things might move, you might get frustrated, you might make a mistake. You want to make sure that you set yourself up for success. So if I line this one up right here, right along the edges, when I get to that side, it ends right here. There's 2 squares here on this grid line. So I'm going to start, instead of right here on the corner, I'm going to spread out that overage, lay it down like that. And I'm going to line up that one line of the grid with the side of my quilt. That way I'll have a little over here, and then we'll go across, and I'll have a little over there. Personal preference. You don't have to do that. Let's mark this one together. And again, you can certainly line it up, but I'm going to line up that little edge on the grid line, and I'm going to go ahead and put these on so my quilt doesn't go flying, and line up the side. Here's the size box. I'm using an 8x12 block. This is another reason why sometimes if I'm doing edge to edge, even if it doesn't fit perfectly, I like to do one tile. I don't have to mark that. I know I'm using the 8x12. That's the only block I'm going to use. If you're afraid you're going to forget, you can mark the first one, and then you know your project, you know you're using the same one all the way across. I'm going to get some tape. I like to use tape when I mark these. Here's why. I'm going to get a couple pieces. The first thing I want to mark is my center. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this so I don't have to get my project wet. The marker does come off, absolutely, but I like to use the tape and then I can peel it off before I start my quilting. I've got tape in the center. I'm going to mark my center dot. I'm okay with partially marking the crosshairs. If you want to mark them all the way across, you can go ahead and do that. I've got 3 more pieces of tape, and I'm going to go ahead and put one under each corner and that center mark. You can see I ended up moving my tile. We'll readjust. You do that by lining back up. There's my center dot. There's my crosshairs. I want to make sure that's lined up across the top, and then I'm centered with my previous markings. Grab my marker, Another reason why I do tape is even though I said use a light hand, I just don't. I know myself, I have difficulty doing that. So if I use the tape, I can use a heavier hand and make the marks a little bit darker. Now I'm at the top of my project, so I won't need this mark here, and obviously I don't need the edge markings, and I don't have to make it go around the corner because there's nothing here that has to match. So I just need a straight line right there. So that's marked, that's marked, that's marked. Center dot, crosshairs, I don't need the size, I know I'm working only with an 8x12 block. You can see my markings. This will help me center it in my hoop and get ready to do my quilting design. And before I do my quilting, once I have everything lined up, and I'll show you how to do that, I'll peel off the tape. We've marked our first one. Before we move it along, I promised to show what if only you had a 5x7 hoop. Here's the 4x6 tile. This is the 8x12. See that? So with the larger hoop, I can use this tile, and there are even bigger tiles. This is just the biggest one that I can use today. But if all I had was a 5x7 hoop, for every one of these, I would need 4 of these. So if this takes 20 hoopings, this takes 80 hoopings. It's a lot of hoopings, but it's an option for you if you don't want to go to a long arm quilter. And again, you can just do a little bit at a time. Let's lay out one more in this direction. I'll show you how to line it up. And then we'll go to the next row because we have to line up more on more sides, and we'll lay out a few of those. Let's take this one and we're going to line it up along the lines we just drew. And I'm going to get a couple pieces of tape ready because I'm using tape instead of writing on my quilt today. I've got this about where I want to place it. I'm going to go ahead and add my tape for my crosshairs and then for my side markings. And obviously writing on your quilt would be faster than this. It's just a personal preference. I've got all the tape marks placed, and remember we're lining up with these previous marks. And when I draw my new marks, I don't want something like this where it looks like an equal sign. I don't want 2 marks. I want it all together as 1 mark. So you're writing right over the other mark. Sorry, the cap keeps falling off. Get that out of the way. Line these up, line this up. I'm going to start down here. Make sure I'm lined up correctly before I draw my center mark and my crosshairs. That looks good. There's 1 mark, and then my mark here is falling right over the other mark. And same up here. Everything's lined up. Center mark, my little mini crosshairs, which works well enough for me. You'll see why too when we go to hoop this. As long as you've got a little bit here, it'll work out fine. The one advantage to going all the way is it helps you line up your next tile. But once you're in your hoop, just the dot and a couple small lines will help. Sorry for the barking. We've got some dogs here. Mark this one, and this one, and the bottom one. I've got 3 more to do. 2 are going to fall right onto the quilt. The last one will be a partial, so I'll show the partial. I'm at the end of my row. I'm ready to mark my last tile, and I realized I wasn't marking the bottom. Not the end of the world, because I've been marking my corners as I go. It's easy enough to line out, but the bottom line will help. I'm going to go back and mark the bottom. Mark that center mark. If you happen to miss it, you probably got it. And then I can go back and lay this tile and line everything up. So if you do miss a mark while you're doing this, it's very easy to go back and to make the additional mark. I'm ready to mark my last tile. I'm going to line up the marks I have from the previous one. I'm hanging over a little bit more than I anticipated, but I'll show you what to do when that happens. Of course, there's another option. I could pull another tile if I want to, but I'm trying to make this easy on myself. This works better for me. Personal preference again. There probably is another tile that will fit exactly in that spot. I'll show you what I do when the quilting runs on and off my project. Let's line up the last one. That looks pretty good. Looks like I might be a little bit off. You can grab a ruler if you have one. I don't have one handy. I'm going to use the clapper. I'm checking my crosshairs against the crosshairs on the tile. And honestly, if you're a little bit off, it won't matter. It still looks good. I've done this before, and I've done it where The markings were a little crooked between tiles and it still works. Okay, there's my first row. Let's move on to the next row. We're ready to mark our second row. I've got some tape. This is the bottom of my first row. Lining this up, I'm going to put my tape here, 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 and here. So let's mark. You're lining up. I'm going to check these marks first. That looks good. Make sure that's not in there. Make sure that's nice and flat. That looks a little off, but it looks good enough. I'm going to go with that, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Let's mark this, my center dot, my little mini crosshairs. Let's not forget the bottom this time, and my last corner. It's very minor. This bottom line is shifted over that direction, probably, I don't know, about an ink mark's worth. It's not totally centered. It'll be fine. You're never going to notice when you quilt it. I'm going to watch for that as I move. Now all you do is keep going down your quilt. Let's go ahead and mark this one. By redrawing over the previous lines, I can make sure that I'm in the right spot. That looks good. That looks good. That matches. My corner layout, I'm a little bit low on that side and I'm a little bit low here. What I'm going to do before I do my crosshairs is shift up just a little bit, and then I'll redraw this line on the corner, and what I'm going to do is just make it a little bit longer, so when I go to the next row underneath I know which line I'm looking at. That's still fine. That's fine. Make sure your quilt is lying nice and flat. Line, bottom line, corner line. There we go. So I've got my corner, my top, my corner, both sides, my center dot with the crosshairs, the corner, and the center bottom. You just do the rest of your quilt. Go all the way over and all the way down. I'm getting down to the end of my quilts. I'm on my last row. I thought I would show this because this will become obvious when we do our quilting. Just see how it runs off? I don't need to make any of these marks because I don't have another row. So I want to line up with this and with this, make my crosshair, and make my side mark. So all the way across I won't be marking the bottom because there's no more quilt. Again, when we get to the machine, I'll show you what I do when the pattern runs off the quilt. You do have a couple of options. My entire quilt is marked. There's the top, there's the bottom. I rotated it. Before I put this away, I'm going to take a damp Kleenex and just rub off the little bits of marker on the edges just to make sure this is clean. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to pull this to the bottom corner and you'll see why. Here's my crosshair all the way on the side for this one. Remember how it ran off to the side? Here's my big hoop. I'm eyeballing it. If I haven't cut my batting and backing, I can see I need this much plus a little bit over to get it in the hoop. I'm going to start with just my backing. I went ahead and sewed a few big pieces together. That's going to be my backing. This is green tea Bella Solid. I'm going to grab my quilt. I'm going to lay it out. I know my seam is in the center. Let's find the center of my quilt. Right there. So between the orange and the white, I'm going to lay that on the center. And I will put batting in, but I'm just checking my backing for size. I want to make sure I'm going to have enough for hooping that I don't have to cut extra. Let's grab our hoop. I'm going to check each of the edges and corners. Pull this way. So let's start at the top. I'm going to look at the crosshairs. And your hoop should have some marks like this. You can eyeball the center of it. You could also go get your little plastic piece if you want, but I'm just going to eyeball it. I have plenty for the top, which is my concern with that part. So that part is good. We're going to slide it over to the side, to the edge. Oh, I'll be good. I can tell just by looking at it, but just in case. Let's lay out the hoop. Yep, no problem. We have enough. Let's lay out, let's pull to the other side. There's less on that side if I want to keep my seam in the center. Do you see that? I still have enough. That'll be fine. Let's go to the bottom. It should be the same. You can do this with your quilt. Just do it right along with me. Make sure you've got everything. And if you haven't cut your piece yet, this is a great way to figure out how much extra you need to make sure you've got enough to fit in your hoop. Here's the bottom. I'm good on the bottom. It's going to be close over there though. Do you see how my bottom isn't even? I'm going to pull this back 1. Center, center. It's still close, but it's going to be tight. Do you see that? I'm not going to have much to get into the hoop. I may end up needing to add a scrap fabric strip. We'll see when we get there. And let's check our bottom corner. Here's my last crosshair. Everything looks good. I'm good with my backing. We're going to work with our backing. We're going to put the batting inside and we're going to build our quilt sandwich. Something else I can do, which I didn't realize when I was filming. It's hard on a small table not seeing everything. I've got way more fabric than I need up there. If I pull the quilt up just a little bit, I don't have to worry about being short on the bottom. What I'm going to do to help me remember tape, and I don't want to get it caught in my quilt, that'll help me know where to put top center so I don't shift too far down and end up short on my backing. For my batting, I've done the same thing. I've sewn together a couple pieces. Sometimes I do a zigzag stitch, but it's hard to get to my machine right now that has the zigzag. So I straight stitched it with a stitch length of 2 on my Juki and pressed the seam open. It's not a big deal. It's a lap quilt. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to line up this seam with the seam on my backing. And this is Hobbs 80/20. I've used Hobbs. I've used Missouri Star. That quarter shot batting is very similar to Hobbs. And of course I've used Kimberbell batting. Let me get this laid out. My batting is about the same size as my backing. So what I need to do is grab that piece of tape. Remember, that's my marker, so I know where to lay my quilt top. I'm a little off center, but that's okay. And then this doesn't have to be exact. It's getting all squishy. That'll just help me know where to lay my quilt top. We need to have some way to secure our backing, batting, and top before we're doing all of that hooping. You can use basting stitches. Some people like to use those little curved pins. I'm going to spray it. Usually I would do this on the floor and I open the door and I get some ventilation. When you use the 505 basting spray, you spray your batting. Don't spray your fabric. You'll get little spots and then you'll be mad at yourself. I'm going to peel this back and I'm going to start at the top. This is why normally I do this on the floor. I could do the whole thing at once. Now I'll have to do it in pieces, but that's okay. I'll show you how I do this. I'm going to spray the batting. Not too close, not too far. And I don't use very much, just enough to make it stick. And then this also gives you an opportunity to check for any dark threads. Then I'm going to smooth it. I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to do my backing first, and then I'm going to do my quilt. And then you have an option. You can iron it. That'll kind of help make sure all the wrinkles are out before you start hooping. I've got my backing down. Everything's nice and smooth. I have my little tape mark showing me where to line up my quilt. I have a seam line in the center. I'm going to do the same thing for my quilt top. Again, spray the batting. Don't spray your fabric. Take a moment, put a new needle on your machine. I have one of these on my machines right now. I'm going to leave this on since I used the spray baste in between. Make sure you've got bobbins and get your clear blue tiles USB next to your machine. This is the thread color I will be using today. It's a really nice purpley pink color. We're going to plan out our quilting. I've put sticky notes down to represent the number of tiles I've used and the layout on my quilts. I have 5 across and 4 down. For a larger project, I like to work center out. Here's my center. Here's where I'm going to start. Why do you work center out? Because as we hoop, we're going to tighten everything in the hoop and we can smooth things out toward the edges. If you want to start in the top corner and you're comfortable with that, you can. But as you go across, you will shift everything a little bit this way, particularly your batting and your backing, as you're kind of smoothing and working through it. So keep that in mind as you're hooping. I find I get better results if I start in the center and work out. For smaller projects, let's say you have a table runner and you just had 3 hoopings, you can do center and out, or you can go straight across. It really won't matter for a smaller project. I'm going to start with these 2. I have to set up the camera and rotate in this direction. It's too hard to stand behind the tripod and try to hoop, so you'll probably see me a bit in these shots. I'm dressed grungy. It's the weekend. Here we go. I know that I want the 2 center pieces, not this one. That's not where I want to start. Here's where I want to start, here and here. Since I'm filming and I don't want to lose track, I'm going to go ahead and mark these. Number 1 and number 2. That way I remember which hoopings I'm doing first. And as we quilt these, I'll be removing the tape. That'll help me keep track as well. Here's my number 1. This part is the hardest part of the process and the most frustrating when you first start, but it gets better with practice. So if you're hungry or tired or cranky or need a break, take it before you start doing this, especially if this is your first time working with the clear blue tiles. Get your hoop and loosen, loosen, loosen. We're putting all 3 layers into the hoop. Make sure you've got plenty of room to work with. I'm going to lay down my hoop on top, just about where I know it's going to go, and that's going to help me figure out where to put my hoop underneath. So this is going to have to go underneath. Find the easiest way to get to underneath. Let me pick that up. I'm going to hold on to the hoop right there. About there. I can tell it's crooked already. And we're going to lay that down. I'm going to partially roll this. It'll make it easier for me as I'm working with it. Let's just start where we are. I can tell I'm not centered. How do you center? You take your time. Grab your grid. Let me show you a close-up of the grid. Your grid will probably have a picture like this. See how it says ABC? That's to help you make sure that you've got the right side up on your grid. If you put it in upside down, the letters will be backwards. There's little notches that go right over the notches on your hoop. And then you'll have a center mark, which is right here. I can see my crosshair underneath and my center dot right there. I need to get that dot in this marking. How do you do that? You move it. This is the part that requires a bit of patience. Just kind of sliding it. That's why I like to have it really loose and have it underneath. I'm very close. My center is here. My dot is right there. So I need to come down a little bit, and it's got to come this way a little bit. There's no, let's see, there's the bottom of my hoop. There's no magic way to do this. I didn't have that quite centered correctly. Now I need to pull it way down. You just have to take your time and center it. I'll pull that down, slide that back up, feel my hoop underneath. There. That's really close. I'm going to go ahead and push this in. It's right smack in the center. And then there are a couple other things we're going to check before I tighten my hoop all the way. And it is a bit of a bear sometimes to get all these layers in. See how I push down here and this pops out, even though I have my hoop really loose underneath. This is pretty good. Now, this part doesn't have to be exact, and you'll see why when we get to the machine. Get as close to center as possible. I'm going to hand tighten and then pick up the camera and show this to you. Here's the center. Do you see how my center dot is a little bit off center? And my crosshairs don't quite line up with the lines on my grid, but it's pretty dang close. That'll be close enough. We're going to make adjustments when we get to the machine. The way I make adjustments with my machine is very simple. I actually don't use the laser or anything. I do it manually, so even if you don't have a fancy machine, this will work. I have this where I want it. I'm going to look underneath before I completely tighten this down. I want to make sure this is nice and smooth. I actually did a pretty dang good job. Now I'll tell you, if it's not completely flat, if you've got a fold, like I have a small fold right here, but you see where it is? It's right here near the frame of the hoop. This blue line is where the quilting stops. Your quilting only happens where the tile was placed. If you've got it centered real nice and you're comfortable with it, maybe you find a little fold or a bubble. If you can smooth it and make sure it's outside of those lines, you're good. I've even done this before where I had a little bubble and I smoothed it and I took a piece of tape and I taped my fabric over here to hold it tight. That way the part that's being quilted was nice and flat. That works. Don't get too hung up on making sure that the hooping is perfect. Get it as close as you can to centered. Once you're comfortable with it, hand tighten and screwdriver tighten. You always want to screwdriver tighten this type of hoop. If you don't, there's a chance it'll pop out while it's embroidering, and then you have to do this all over again. Make sure your hoop is all the way pressed down before you screwdriver tighten. Sometimes I think it's all the way down and it's not, and I'll start the screwdriver tighten and then the inside pops out. So make sure that's pressed down and screwdriver tighten your hoop. Now we need to get ready to take this over to the machine. For my machine and my setup, this part of the quilt can hang down the side. It's not a problem. It's up against a wall, so I can let that hang down straight. Here's the arm, the part that slides into the machine, top of my hoop, bottom of my hoop. This needs to get out of the way, all of this bulk. That's what the bands are for. You want to go ahead and roll up your quilt. Grab your band, and it just kind of tucks in on itself. And you can adjust this when you get to your machine if it's not quite right, but get it out of the way. You also want to make sure if your machine is up against a wall, you're going to have stuff hanging off the back of your machine. You need to pull your machine out and make room. My machine is on a cart with another machine directly behind it, so I had to take that machine off the cart. Otherwise, there's no room for this quilt to move. Make sure you've got enough room on your machine. I'm on a Baby Lock Meridian. My USB for Clear Blue Tiles is plugged in. Let's pick our file. I need to bring it up on my USB. And I do have some additional files loaded onto this USB because I've been using my Clear Blue Tiles. But I'm going to use what came on the USB. So embroidery files, quilting. All the different file types are here. My machine uses PES. And then we've got our files. The bitty blocks are the small 2x2. We won't be using those. We're not using border files today. I'm not using the centering crosshairs. There's information on that in the user's guide. We've got fall, spring, summer, and winter, and then loops and swirls. You can look in your guide and see what they all look like. I want to finish this quilt quickly. Let's say I'm in a hurry, this is a gift, and I need to get it done. The fastest one is loops. Now you'll see there's block by block and clear blue tiles. Today we're using our clear blue tiles. I have the 8x12 tile. You can see all the different sizes are here. You need to find whichever tile you're using. I'm looking for 8x12. Now I have the expansion set. I know this is 8x10. That means this is 8x12 and this is 8x14. 8x12. That's all I need. The reason this is the fastest is it just goes and it makes a loop and it makes a loop. It doesn't have any back stitching or anything. It goes fairly quickly. You can also go to Kimberbell's website and look for those large scale background quiltings, but I'm going to use what came on the USB today. I'm going to hit set. and embroidery. You can see there's only one step to this. I need to get my quilt on my machine. Here's my quilt on the table. Here's the part we rolled up. I'm going to fold this over because we need to get our hoop on our machine, and I need access to this arm. This is how I'm going to get it onto my machine. I'm just going to carry it over very carefully, just like this, and slide that onto my machine. Make sure this extends fully behind the machine, that the extra drops down in front, and then I'll take this part and unroll it and hang it down the side of my machine. Here we are at the machine. You can see that it's loaded. It's draped over the side. My quilt is rolled up, and everything can go through the back. Now, as far as size limitations, there is a size limitation for Clear Blue Tiles. I'll try to find that. The reason being is the weight on your machine. Now, I have seen some people, they do some interesting things where they'll rig up something that suspends this from the ceiling. You can look things like that up online. Very interesting. But for me, lap quilt is about the size limit for this. I do have a long arm. When things get bigger, I put them on the long arm. We're going to go ahead and figure out how to center this and quilt out our first block. Here's how I figure out if mine is centered correctly. I hand crank my needle. I can see that my needle is a little bit over from the center dot. So my needle's landing here. My center dot is right here. I'm going to scooch it over. Let me show you how I do that on my machine. My machine has a button up at the top that says layout, and then the button that says move comes up. There's some arrows. When I push an arrow, my machine will move. You'll hear the embroidery hoop move. There it goes. Now that's the wrong way. I need to go this way. So all I do is keep moving it, and I'll show you the hoop. I'm going to keep moving it until my needle is right above that center dot. That looks pretty good. I can hand crank. Spot on. That's perfectly centered. Now if I needed to move it up or down, I would hit the up or down arrows. But now I'm set here and I'm ready to go. I'm all done moving. I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm good to start here. If I put my presser foot down, my little light turns green. But I'm going to show you something interesting about this machine. If I hit the return button, it moves my hoop back to where it was originally, but then if I hit the embroidery button, it moves it back to where I just adjusted it. It's just a weird little thing about my machine. So depending on your machine, it's going to do what it's going to do. Now it's ready to go. This is all centered. I've got my thread loaded. Everything looks good. Everything is out of the way. I'm going to recommend you never get up and leave your machine when you're doing anything with the Clear Blue Tiles. Before I do my quilting, now that I know it's centered, I'm going to get rid of my tape. If you forget, it's not a big deal, especially if you're using this pattern, you can rip the tape off. These lines on the side were to help me center everything in my hoop and line up as I was laying out my tiles. I don't need these anymore. I'm going to go ahead and carefully remove all the pieces of tape in the hoop. It's easier to take it off now than to pick it out from under the quilting. All my tape is removed. We're ready to go. Let's quilt out our first Clear Blue Tiles section. Our first hooping is done. One down, 19 more to go. Let's take this off our machine. I'm going to bring it back to the table and show you how to line up for your next hooping. We're back at the table. You need to loosen your hoop and remove your hoop. And we're going to repeat the process for our next hooping. Here's my number 2. I'm going to slide this underneath. Grab my hoop. I'm going to start by eyeballing it before I put the grid on. And then we'll quilt this one together. And then we'll do another section, the top or the bottom, that's going to run off the machine. And I'll show you what I do when that happens. So I'm going to work on adjusting this, same as before. See how it's not quite perfect? And there's a little shifting in the hoop with your little piece of plastic, so we'll be centering this one again on the machine just like before by manually hand cranking the needle and moving. I'm back at my machine. I've got my quilt loaded. Let's take a look. I'm off just a little bit again. I'm going to do the same process as before. I'll let you watch the needle. On my machine, again, I hit the layout button and then move. We're just going to scooch the, it's actually not moving the needle, it's moving your embroidery hoop. That looks pretty good. That's great. Right in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and I hit OK and return, and you'll see the machine move. It's telling me that the needle isn't in its preferred position. Sometimes it gets really picky. There we go. Return, and then embroidery. See how it shifts back and forth? It's ready to go. You can tell because the needle's right above the dot. I'm going to take off all of my tape. I have all my tape off. I'm ready to go. We're done with this section. Now remember, the section before was right above this section. We can go look and see just how close these get together and why the clear blue tiles looks like edge-to-edge quilting. Here's the section we just quilted. You can get in close and see the quilting. And as we move to the top, I know where the top of this is because I did the quilting right here. This is the top of the section I just did, and this is the bottom of the previous section. Do you see how close everything gets? This is why it genuinely looks like edge-to-edge quilting. The only reason I know where one ends and one begins is because I did the quilting. Here's the starting point for this particular pattern. Here's the bottom of the other block. Now they don't connect, but when you do long arm quilting, you get a similar look because you do, if you do the pantographs, you do sections. You do a row and you advance and you do a row. So they don't connect either. But look how close these get. That looks fantastic. When you're done, it's going to look like edge-to-edge quilting. I'm going to get this out of the hoop and I'm going to shift to the bottom. I'm back at the machine with my next section. I got it centered. I got everything lined up. I centered my needle. I'm going to remove my tape. Let's have a look at this design. Here's the center of the design. The bottom of my quilt is about here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it's going to run up and down off the quilt. When you're doing quilts on a long arm, you go around and you use a basting stitch and you baste down all the edges. You can do that, or if you've got paper tape, you can tape this. You need to anchor this so that if your needle is going across like this, it doesn't get caught on your presser foot. The other option is to sit here and watch it quilt. When it starts to run like this, you can cut your threads, advance the design until it comes back to your fabric, and then start again. This is a very straightforward, simple, single line loop design. It's not very complicated. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape down here. I actually have 2 pieces of tape. Press those down, and I'm going to keep an eye on it. It'll run on and off the machine, but I want to make sure it doesn't get caught on the tape. Now, when I go to start this, it starts in this bottom corner. Watch the machine move. I'm going to stop it right away. I'm going to needle up. There's no reason for me to stitch this beginning part. I just don't need it. On my machine, I have this little needle with the plus minus. I want to plus it forward. You can go 1 stitch at a time, 10, 100, 1,000. I'm going to try 10, another 10, and what I'm doing is just getting it to when it gets onto my fabric. I'm almost there. You can see the little crosshair moving. That looks good. Let me show you where it is on my machine. Here's where it is on my machine. So instead of stitching that little bit at the beginning that I just don't need, I advanced it. I could have stitched it. It's fine. Now it's going to stitch on and off. This section is done. You can remove the tape now. You can remove it later. I know that I'm going to need to square up this quilt. If I don't want to pull out all the tape, I can wait. There's a chance that as I square up the quilt, most of this is going to get cut off. Let's use this to plan the rest of our quilting process. I found my other water-soluble marker. It was in with my markers in my little pencil holder. We did these two first. We just did this one. Next I'm going to do this one top center. And then what I'm going to do is go from center out like that, or you can do this one, this one, this one, this one, then these, then those, and then I'm going to want to do the center, top and bottom, center, top and bottom. That's how I'm going to quilt the rest of this project. Hoop, load, quilt, you repeat it over and over and over again. Same process as before. I'm going to go ahead and do all of that off camera. When I'm done quilting all my sections, I'll bring back the quilt. We'll get a good look at it. Any questions on the process or using clear blue tiles, please leave it in the comments for me. I just finished my last hooping. I timed this, if you're curious. When I'm not filming, it takes me about 10 minutes from start to finish for each hooping. So you can take 10 minutes, multiply it by 20, and figure out how long that took me if I wasn't filming. Let's get a look at the quilting. One of the easiest ways to do that for this quilt is to look at it on the back. Here's an overview. You can tell it's nice and even. We're going to go in up close. It looks great. Let's get a little closer. Here's a real close-up look. I'm trying to figure out, I can tell where the rows end because I can see my tie-offs. Here's a tie-off here, 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 and here. This is the space between the rows, between the tiles. So here's one tile right here, and the other tile goes off the screen. So one tile, another tile, another tile, another tile. But when you look at it, it looks seamless. Here's the front of the quilt. It looks really good. I love these little frogs. Let's look at the little frogs a little closer. One of them got his little head circled. That's really cute. See how nice this looks? Very nice, very even. The stitching looks great. It looks seamless. It really does look like you long-armed your quilt. All I have left to do is to trim it, even it up, add my binding and a label. I have videos for that on my channel. I'm going to link that below because this video is all about clear blue tiles. I'm going to finish this quilt and then we'll come back for the closing. I hope you've enjoyed learning about clear blue tiles today with me. If you'd like to see more projects using clear blue tiles, please leave it in the comments for me below. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thanks for joining me today. Happy quilting. See you next time.